Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here this morning. Now, this show I'm going to do right now, the first part of it, probably for the first few minutes, I'm going to talk about something very important. We are headed toward a massive earth-wide crisis. And part of the reason why we're heading toward this crisis is the expansion of credit worldwide and the expansion of debt. In this weird system that we have going right now, never been any time like it before in human history, all of your money is actually debt related. All of the value, everything has been transferred over into debt. Debt has become an asset. And if the debt is paid off, the asset disappears. The world is ready and primed. I've never seen anything like it, honest to gosh. The world is primed for all the debt, basically, the whole thing collapsing. There's been an expansion of credit, and along with this expansion in credit, simultaneously, has been an expansion in the population. A population explosion. Now a crisis is coming. And believe me, this is nothing. Gee, I got a little bit of paper towel stuck on my mouth. This is nothing to be laughed at. This is a situation that has never existed before in human history, where we have an entire population out there that's totally dependent upon the system. You see, going back in history, people always had a certain amount of self-sufficiency. They had to. I mean, it wasn't like our modern day where everything's brought to you in the store, and you just go to the store and pick up any merchandise or anything you want, you know. It's all there. It's available all the time at the store. But this has actually happened just since we've been alive. But all the time that we've been alive, it's been this way. And so we've gotten used to it as being the normal. We need something, we just go to the store and get it. It's always there, always available. We've had this enormous population explosion in the world. Now, where does all the problem come in all this? The problem comes in how the European Union itself was actually knitted together originally to begin with. This is where the problem comes in. So this next crisis is going to be a crisis actually in government. And, okay, let's get the chart started and take a look at what I'm talking about here. Start the charts right here, and let's take a look at what's going on. You know, this is the thing. People nowadays, they feel entitled. Because they've always had it, they've grown up with it. Grocery stores full of food and so on. And the government supporting them. An awful lot of people are on government support and everything else. So people have grown entitled, and when you start cutting them back or not giving them as much money as they expect, what happens? Right here's what happens. You know, and it's happening right now in real time. Now, this is not just confined to France. All of the world's countries are in this state of affairs, the same state of affairs, right? And so what we've got is we've got a European Union that wasn't put together properly to begin with, and then we've got huge problems like in Italy. Italy's basically broke. Greece and all of these countries, the European Central Bank and Mario Draghi have kept all this going for a long time. So this epicenter of this next crisis is going to be in government, and it's going to be in Europe. That's where it's going to be centered. But that doesn't mean that the tentacles of the crisis aren't going to spread out to other countries, like the United States. The cost of this crisis in Europe is going to be paid in human life. This is going to be a crisis not only in the financial system, but it's going to be a crisis that affects people on a human level. When the system actually in Europe basically melts down. The center of this meltdown is going to be in Europe. Oh, the banking system in Europe, they can't raise interest rates in Europe. The banks can't make any money because interest rates are so low on the bonds and everything. And so what's happening is we got banks like Deutsche Bank that are not going to be able to get up and become prosperous again, no matter how many cuts they make. All these cuts Deutsche Bank is making is just making them less profitable. This whole thing is getting ready to collapse, especially in Europe. Now, it's going to spread tentacles out to other countries like the United States. And how it's going to appear in the United States is an increase in the poverty level, an increase of the amount of people that are unemployed, and an increase of the homeless. A tremendous increase. Probably a tenfold increase. And you're going to see where there's not homeless camps now, you're going to see homeless camps spring up in the United States. All over. Where right now is probably just a vacant field. We got a few small homeless camps in the United States here and there, or even medium-sized homeless camps right now. But the number of these homeless camps is going to increase drastically in the United States. Probably a tenfold increase. And then within these homeless areas, you have things like there's a whole different slew of diseases that can go along with homelessness. One of the diseases that the whole world is trying to fight is antibiotic resistant tuberculosis, amongst many other diseases. It's going to be an untenable situation, and especially in the center of this situation in Europe, where they see a total meltdown, it's going to be 1,000 times worse than in countries like the United States, for instance. Because the United States will still have government. We're talking about nothing less here than the entire government system breaking down into chaos in Europe as the European Union actually dissolves into nothingness and the euro becomes worth nothing. The whole thing just basically collapses in basically one giant European-sized riot. This is basically what I see coming. And this is just a small signal. What we're getting now that's happening in France is just a small signal of things to come that's going to spread all across Europe, to almost every country in Europe. And there was an expansion of human life, a swelling of the human population. And now what we're going to see is just the same as you see in nature. There's a creature that lives in the far north in the tundra called lemmings. And their population quite literally expands and expands and expands until a sudden contraction of the population. This is something we see over and over and over again in nature, but it's awful hard for us to relate it to our own species. Well, we've created the conditions ripe for this. It's coming, this whole thing is coming into a human crisis, a humanitarian crisis, that you're not going to be able to rush in aid and support from other countries when the countries that normally provide aid and support are the ones that are needing the aid and support. There's going to be nobody coming to help you when all of Europe is under this and the United States has got their own problems trying to take care of their own. And so what's the end result in this? Is a decrease in the human population. This is going to be a terrible calamity, and it's all coming together in the perfect storm in the financial world. All that's needed now is a trigger or a catalyst, and I can see a half a dozen triggers or catalysts out there that could make this start. And once it gets started, well, it makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up to think about what is actually in store. for the entire world with this situation that has been created by greed in the system and corruption in the system. We've turned a blind eye to it, and it's built up now to this point where it's going to cause this terrible crisis. We're only going to learn from this crisis when the crisis is over, because an awful lot of people are listening to my show right now, and they're saying, hey, you know, what crisis? What crisis? We're in an economic recovery, aren't we? Oh, Europe's doing great. There's nothing wrong in Europe. You know, what they're doing is turning a blind eye to the subtle, very subtle signs that are forming. And they do the same thing. I mean, if you had a dam that was ready to break, and you had a town that's living right next to the dam, and one guy goes up and says, you know, there's cracks in the dam. We're getting an awful lot of rain lately, and the dam is swelling too full and everything else, and he's raising the alarm. And the rest of the people are in the town like, oh, that dam's always been there. It'll never break. Oh, you know? This is the way with us right now in the world. We're complacent, and if disasters and troubles are mentioned to us, we turn a blind eye to it and we say, oh, well, that could never happen. They have a name for that. So, I'm having a brain fart right now. I can't remember it. Why people just can't believe. They just can't believe it could happen until after it happens. Oh, it's impossible for it to happen. So listen, guys. I've talked for a few minutes about this subject. It just seems to me that the perfect storm is building for some place probably within the next 18 months for this thing to strike out of nowhere. It's going to take a lot of people by surprise. It's going to start with the recession, but it's not really a recession. It's a global depression. And then because the people aren't getting what they need, and they're used to a certain lifestyle, they're going to do this. But not just in France. And then that's going to lead to worse. Much worse. And it's just going to, everything's going to go nuts. That's basically what's going to happen. Everything's going to go nuts. Because especially if we get a trigger or a catalyst like Deutsche Bank going down. To trigger it, it could happen a lot sooner. And I mean, there's no guarantee here that Deutsche Bank might not go down in the next couple weeks. They could just all of a sudden done. You know, I mean, this is like a sword of Damocles hanging over us. This crisis. And I've known it's coming. And you know how I know 100% sure this is going to happen? I'm not coming on here and telling you guys, hey, you know what, this crisis is coming, and I'm not sure. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. I'm telling you it's going to happen, and you know how I'm 100% sure it's going to happen? Numbers, math. You just cannot keep expanding this debt exponentially on the way to the moon. I know every time the stock market goes up and up and up and up, people say, well, it's going to go up forever. They said the same thing in 1929 when it was going up and up and up and up. They said it's going to go up forever. And that's the feeling right now about the stock market. But not just in the stock market. People always feel that way. They always feel like this is going to go on forever because it's been going on ever since I've been alive. Until all of a sudden, bang. The numbers tell us it's going to happen this way. The numbers explain this to us. Because of the debt expanding exponentially, and we know it cannot keep expanding exponentially until there's a day of reckoning coming. And we're almost there. So let's get started. Let's move into the markets now. I know I've ranted a little bit about this, but we see a silver price today of $15.23. And it's up 3 cents on the day, which is better than nothing. Let's take a look at gold. Gold is $1,410. Almost said $14. $1,410.70. It's up $4.90 on the day. Cryptocurrency. Now, cryptocurrency was doing awfully well But it's hit a little pothole. It's going to be going along in this little pothole for a little while longer. We're looking at a market cap of $276 billion with a Bitcoin dominance of 65.8%. You're probably going to see that Bitcoin dominance fall back a little bit when we start to go back into the next we really get deep into the next bull market, because then you're going to see some excitement come back into the altcoins again. You're going to see them go up a little bit. And so the altcoin that I'm really got my eye on here is Litecoin right here. Litecoin is extremely undervalued right now, considering the price of Bitcoin. And considering that there's a halving, the price of Litecoin is extremely undervalued, in my estimation. That's just my opinion. It's not financial advice, just my opinion. Let's take a look now at the Dow Jones Industrial Average for today. And we're looking at 27,332. Is that an all-time high, by the way? Just a sec. Let me refresh the page. Well, it's got 2 minutes to open. So, yeah, no, it says market open. Just a second here. No, it says that close. No, we got 2 more minutes. We got 1 more minute. 1 more minute. So I'll come back to the Dow. But is it at an all-time high right now? Let me go in here to the maximum chart here and let's take a look. I think it's awfully close if it's not. We got a peak right there of 11,700. Oh, wait. No, I'm not looking at the right. I haven't got this out far enough. Here we go. Okay, here we go. We got a peak right there of 26.6. It's 27. It's 26.7. No, we're at an all-time high right now, 27,332. We've had 3 peaks here in this market. Actually, this is almost the 4th peak. But you notice, until recently, it hasn't really broken out. You know, what goes up has to come down. And, you know, this market can't keep going up into infinity without creating a hyperinflation. The only way this market can continue to rise into infinity is if the dollar becomes worthless in a hyperinflation. You know? But I could see the dollar actually gaining a bit of strength because we're heading toward deflation, and this is why they're lowering interest rates. You know, it's not going to work. Lowering interest rates not going to work because everybody is tapped out. The only way it's going to start to work is if they go below 0, so that you actually make money taking out a loan. Then it might start to work. But the problem with that is, if you go too far below 0, people aren't going to keep their money in the bank. They're going to take it out in cash. Well, got to get rid of cash. You know, now you can see the way the bankers are thinking. It's just completely... They're completely out of control. Let's take a look at oil. $60.44 on the day. So oil's up 23 cents. Now let's go back to the Dow. Let's start the day here. We're looking at down 4.62. So we're looking at just slightly down today, ever so slightly. It's starting the day down 4.62 points down, which is almost nothing. Let's take a look at the U.S. Treasuries now. Gee, this market report's getting a bit long. Our Treasury yields are rising today. I'm starting to see what's starting to look like the initial phases of a bounce back in Treasuries. You know, a bounce back in higher yields. The yields are starting to bounce back a little bit higher. But it could start slow at first, and we could see the yields start to rise. I'm half expecting to see Treasury yields starting to rise again at a certain point. Let's take a look now at U.S. dollar index. And I'm expecting this dollar, you know, to get a little bit stronger later on before it finally drops off a cliff. Just before it drops off a cliff, I'm expecting the dollar to go up. Might even break 100 on the U.S. dollar index, you know? And then the reaction. The dollar going up is going to trigger the reaction. And that reaction is going to make the dollar go in the opposite direction, but much faster than it rose. It's going to go down a lot faster than it rose. So anyway, listen. Thank you guys for listening to this market report. I know it was a little bit long this morning, 16 minutes. And we'll catch you guys in the next show. And give me a thumbs up. Thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye.